Sego. It's gonna go. Sadawit. And welcome. I am Tekahionwake. My ashes were interred here today in Stanley Park, and instead of a headstone, a boulder with my name chiseled on it will be rolled over my resting place near my wonderful Siwash Rock. I am Tekahionwake. My aim, my joy, and my pride is to sing the glories of my own people. Never let anyone call me a white woman. There are those who think they pay me a compliment in saying I am just like a white woman. I learned my role as an independent woman from a Haudenosaunee society where women are given a voice in council, considered, respected, a matriarchal society. Tekahionwake means double wampum. It can be said that wampum reflects the personality of its owner. Double wampum suggests two individual personalities, you see. I am also Emily Pauline Johnson. And for almost 30 years of my life, I toured across Canada, the United States, and Great Britain too. As an artist, my choices were my own. And they had power. The power to influence. This is my story.
Sego! I'm told that this is the year of 2023. 2023, imagine! It's been so long since I was invited to speak in public. About 110 years, in fact. I'm from another time. I was born in 1861. Things were very different then. You see, from the moment I could chatter and climb up onto my Grandpa Smoke's lap to hear the stories of my people, I knew I would be on this stage. I knew I was destined to be a storyteller, a writer, and a poet. I've read all kinds of classic poetry in English and can tell you some old tales of the Mohawk people, too. So you are very welcome. Welcome. I'll start you off at my old homestead, shall I? It's called Chiefswood, and it's kept now, I hear, as a museum. You can follow the signs all around Brantford and get to my old stomping grounds quite easily. My father is George Henry Martin Johnson. He built our home for my mother, Emily Susanna Howells, in 1856. I arrived as the youngest of 4 children and swallowing something fierce. We children were wanted and loved, educated and encouraged, but the biting, bickering, and brawling, the most fun for kids, was not acceptable. So my 2 older brothers were taught to treat my sister and me very well, and sometimes they did. Chiefswood is built in the style of the English in Great Britain. That's where my mother came from. The British were always visiting us and seemed to want to make my father their friend. So we 4 siblings were often invited to help host the several dignitaries my father had visited from everywhere. My father, a Mohawk chief, hosted Lord Dufferin, the Governor General of Canada, Homer Watson, a world-famous painter, and my favorite guest, Alexander Graham Bell. Alexander Graham Bell! He's coming! He's coming! He's here. Hello, Mr. Bell. I love your telephone. I use it every day. I will, when we have one.
Are you the child who is to entertain us this evening?
Yes. No. Do you like my dress? It's hand-stitched. Dance? With you? Oh, well, thank you. I would love to dance. My mother taught me how to waltz, and my grandfather, my Dinah, taught me how to do the women's shuffle, the escalier. Woo! Oh! That's my youngest brother, Alan Wawanosh Johnson, dancing with my mother. Woo! Henry Beverly Johnson is playing the piano. Isn't he handsome? Oh, now, Oh, watch out for my sister Eva, though. She bites. I'm 9, and I'm rather intelligent for my age.
No doubt you are. Your father admires you very much.
Oh, not as much as he admires the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte. Pop has read everything there is to know about that short white man.
And where is he?
Napoleon? Well, he's dead. Oh, you mean my father? He's in the library with Grandpa, John Smoke Johnson. Grandpa's a great warrior and a great historian. He taught me that it was Hiawatha, the interpreter for the peacemaker, who sometime in the 10th century gradually welded together 5 separate nations who'd had a war in history. The peacemaker created the Longhouse tradition, and Hiawatha was the only statesman who'd ever solved the problem of perfect government and perfect economy. Oh, well, goodbye, Mr. Bell. Thanks for the dance. I think we were rather good. Good evening, honored guests and loving friends. Please, before I'm sent off to bed, may I perform for you my newest poem of all? The 4th Act by E. Pauline Johnson. That's me. Pine trees sobbing a weird unrest in saddened strains. Crows flying slowly into the west as daylight wanes. Breezes that die in a stifled breath. Oh, happy breezes embraced by death. Fir trees reaching into the sky in giant form. Lift me up with your arms that I may brave the storm. Oh, darling, unclasp your fair warm hand. 'Tis better I should misunderstand. Turn and pity those tender eyes away from me. The burning sorrow that in them lies is misery. Oh, gentlest pleader my life has known. Goodbye. The night and I are alone. Now, thank you so much. Good night. I was what they call a sickly child, and my parents didn't want me to go to the residential school or to the public school here on the reserve. So my mother tutored me here at home. Oh, when she had time, that is. I didn't have very many friends on the reserve. So sometimes, if I was really lonely, Mother would sing me lullabies. Perhaps it was because I was alone so much that I spent all the fine weather on the Grand River. The river was my friend. On the river, I found solace. Well, it is right there at my back door. I wrote about so many feelings while I was in my canoe, just blazing along with the current. And later, when I began to perform my poems in the towns and cities of Ontario, I would always hurry back home to rest and reflect at Chiefswood. West wind blow from your prairie nest, blow from the mountains, blow from the west. The sail is idle, the sailor too. Oh, wind of the west, we wait for you. Blow. Blow, I have wooed you so. But never a favor you bestow. You rock your cradle the hills between, but scorn to notice my white lateen. I stow the sail, unship the mast. I've wooed you long, but my wooing's past. My paddle will lull you into rest. O drowsy wind of the drowsy west, sleep, sleep by your mountain steep, or down where the prairie grasses sweep. Now fold in slumber your laggard wings, for soft is a song my paddle sings. August is laughing across the sky, laughing while paddle, canoe, and I drift, drift where the hills uplift, on either side of the current swift. And oh, the river runs swifter now. The eddies circle about my bow, swirl, swirl as the ripples curl, in many a dangerous pool a whirl. And forward far, the rapids roar, fretting their margins for evermore. Dash, dash with a mighty crash, they seethe and boil and bound and splash. Be strong, O paddle, be brave, canoe. The reckless waves we must plunge into.
reel on her trembling keel, but never a fear my craft will feel. Woohoo! Ha-ha! We've raced the rapids. We're far ahead. The river slips through its silent bed. Sway, sways a bubble spray, and fall in tinkling tunes away. And up on the hills against the sky, a fir tree rocking its lullaby, swings, swings its emerald wings, swelling the song my paddle sings. School children in Canada would learn that poem word for word. It sounded wonderful in their voices. And suddenly, I was included. My voice mattered. The song My Paddle Sings was Grandpa Smoke's favorite. My father's family accepted his English wife as best they could. And he loved my mother so much that he accepted her Anglican religion as well as our own people's. When rum runners took to sneaking onto Six Nations land with crates of whiskey, rot gut Papa called it, he would lie by the roadside, awaiting their wagon. He carried a gun and shot it into the air to frighten them away. That last time, on a cold winter's night, he took on a whole bunch of them and was beaten so badly he never healed. He died before he could. And I watched his eyes through that long, long death. A young man came into our living room and said, "The council has just sent out a runner to inform the community that the chief has begun his journey. If you want to hear the death cry, come out into the night." We stood in the warm darkness together. In the distance, you could hear that fateful death cry down the river, prolonged, high. I shuddered. I went numb, my soul aching. It is a proclamation that shatters even the coldest of hearts, leaving in their memory a sound they will never forget. But yesternight we laughed to view the stars that sailed in seas of blue. Today we wake 'neath grayer skies to look on life with different eyes. To look on life with different eyes. Alas, how many stars are set, for which we are longing, watching yet. Oh, useless hope, oh, eyes that burn, the stars we love will not return. The stars we love will not return. That was Papa's favorite. My mother loved the words of Tennyson, Keats, Byron, and Browning, but my favorite was William Shakespeare, because he liked to write plays. Mother and I would act out the parts. It opened up something exciting in me. It was a longing, and by the time I was 10, I knew I wanted to be an actress. Mother insisted on perfect morals, however. A reciter would be fine. You will be respected. Sometimes, though, I'd hum little tunes to myself while I was writing a poem, like this one, Marshlands. A thin, wet sky that yellows at the rim and meets with sun-lost lip the marshes brim. The pools low-lying, dank with moss and mold, glint through their mildews like large cups of gold. Among the wild rice in the still lagoon, in monotone the lizard shrills his tune. The wild goose homing seeks a sheltering where rushes grow and oozing like guns cling. Late crane with heavy wing and lazy flight sail up the silence in the nearing night, and like a spirit swathed in some soft veil steals twilight and the shadows o'er the swale. Hushed lie the sedges and the vapors creep, thick, gray, and humid, while the marshes sleep. Just as I was starting to sell more of my poems, and drawings too, to major magazines and some to the Globe newspaper, a friend of mine from Brantford, Frank Ye, asked me to recite to his literary group in Toronto. A Canadian authors meeting. I jumped at the chance, and then spent the rest of the day sick with fear. Was I the performer I always wanted to be? Did they ask me because I'm a Mohawk woman, or because I'm an accomplished poet? Whatever the case, I was terrified. At least I didn't throw up while not on stage. On that cold February night, dressed in a creamy silk gown of my mother's, I paced backstage as three gentlemen recited to the crowded auditorium filled with even older gentlemen. Not a woman in sight, not even Mother or Eva. The night seemed to go on, and as the audience coughed and shifted in their seats, I grew more and more alarmed. They'll never want me now. The poem I had chosen was based on a battle at Cut Knife Creek during the Louis Riel Rebellion. I was determined to give voice to the wives and mothers of the warriors. Was I about to lose my career before it had even started? Finally, Frank began my introduction, again too long, that poor audience. Suddenly, I heard my name, E. Pauline Johnson, and Tekahionwake, my new name, our family name, and the one I would now use as a performer. I moved to the platform in a trance. My forest brave, my redskin love, farewell. We may not meet tomorrow, who can tell what mighty ills befall our little band, or what you'll suffer from the white man's hand. Here is your knife. I thought 'twas sheathed for I. No roaming bison calls for it today. No hide of prairie cattle will it maim. The plains are bare. It seeks a nobler game. 'Twill drink the life blood of a soldier host. Go, rise and strike, no matter what the cost. Yet stay. Revolt not at the Union Jack, nor raise thy hand against the stripling pack of white-faced warriors marching west to quell our fallen tribe that rises to rebel. They are all young and beautiful and good. Curse to the war that drinks their harmless blood. Curse to the fate that brought them from the east to be our chiefs, to make our nation least that breathes the air of this vast continent. Still, their new rule and counsel is well meant. They but forget we Indians own the land. From ocean unto ocean that they stand. Upon a soil that centuries agone was our sole kingdom and our right alone. They never think how they would feel today if some great nation came from far away, wresting their country from their hapless braves, giving what they gave us but wars and graves. Then go, fight for liberty and life, and bring back honor to your Indian wife. Your wife? Ah, what of that? Who cares for me? Who pities my poor love in agony? What white-robed priest prays for your safety here, as prayer is said for every volunteer that swells the ranks that Canada sends out? Who prays for victory for the Indian scout? Who prays for our poor nation lying low? None! Therefore, take your tomahawk and go. My heart may break and burn into its core, but I am strong to bid you go to war. Yet stay. My heart is not the only one that grieves the loss of husband and of son. Think of the mothers or the inland seas. Oh, think of the pale-faced maiden on her knees. She never thinks of my wild aching breast, nor prays for your dark face and eagle crest. Endangered by 1,000 rifle balls, my heart the target if my warrior falls. Oh, coward self, I hesitate no more. Go forth and win the glories of the war. Go forth, nor bend to greed of white men's hands. By right, by birth, we Indians own these lands. Though starved, crushed, plundered lies our nation low. Perhaps the white man's God has willed it so. The Globe printed Miss E. Pauline Johnson, the Mohawk princess, scores another triumph.
She's like the voice of the nation that once possessed the country.
And Toronto Saturday Night Magazine said, Miss Johnson is sure of a hearty welcome whenever she may visit Toronto. All these accolades, though, helped me step into my new life. I was about to become known as someone to go and see, a voice to listen to, and a storyteller of the people of the Grand River, just like my Grandpa Smoke. I was on my way. That very first small tour, 5 towns and 4 cities, brought several more requests to print my poems. I asked my sister Eva to put the payments into my porcupine quill box I wanted to save for my mother's birthday. I gained confidence each time I stepped into that glorious light and took my breath from deep inside my heart of hearts. I dreamed I walked in hallowed halls, with gilded mirrors on the walls. No image could I see, and yet I knew, though far away, a promise on some future day, you will remember me. There's hot blood on the rise once more, and slippered feet across the floor call me to the dance. Invitations by the score, sliding underneath my door, whisper, take a chance. I must be doing something right, because last night I played a lumber camp where there were no seats. So some of the local jacks rallied round with planks and nails and built benches on the spot, then paid 2 bits apiece to sit on them. So long ago I closed my eyes, and lonely though my fervent sighs, found a listening ear. And once again I hear the drum, and in my heart and silent comes a single glistening tear. Sometimes I was lonely, but I was a woman alone. And Mother had instilled in us a fear of letting others get too close.
It is not proper to let yourself be touched by another person, she said. It is not aristocratic.
My brothers and my sisters call, we love you and we need you, Paul, your day has come anew. Demanding, reaching fingertips, I hear my name on others' lips, we long to hear from you. The passions of my lonely heart split the silent night apart and touch your restless sleep. For you are young and you are brave, your lust, your love, the lives you gave are calling from the deep. I was so happy when the folks I met wanted copies of what they had heard. I knew the only way they could, really, was to have a book of my work. I needed to be published. And oh, how wonderful that sounded, to be published. And how proud my father would have been. But he was long gone, and now so was our home. Chiefswood was a costly expense, and my brothers had moved to the big city for work and couldn't send much of their salaries home to help. Mother and Eva rented out our small estate and finally found a tiny house in Brantford. I was the only one who had even a hope of supporting my mother. I needed to earn more money, and England was the only place where one could be published in those days. So I toured and toured and saved and saved. I needed letters of introduction into the grand society of London. Each spare moment I had, I'd send off tentative pleas to the friends of my father who'd been so kind to me at Chiefswood. But I was just beginning another tour, which would introduce me to the United States. And, miracle of miracles, manager Frank suddenly found a partner for my evenings. Owen Smiley was a Brit.
I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts. There they are a-standing in a row. Big ones, small ones, some as big as your head.
An accomplished comedian, impersonator, and pianist. He'd warm up the crowds, and while the audience was applauding him madly, I'd be backstage changing into my Indian costume. But what about costumes? Oh my! I could make do well enough with my gowns for my English poems, but what was I to do for my many native works? Although my brothers had played Indians and cowboys with flints and feathers my father had about Chiefswood, I never had anything but fussy, fancy flounces. I would have to start from scratch. Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show had introduced us to Indians galloping on horseback and wearing shiny buckskin. I ordered a buckskin dress from the Hudson Bay catalog. I copied beautiful beadwork and silver brooches from a painting of the maidenly Minnehaha, the literary love of Hiawatha. I contacted all of my father's friends from across the country and from their collections, which included a Blackfoot scalp from a Sioux chief. I created my very own look. I was proud of my mix and match collections of many tribes. Authentic I was called, and authentic I certainly was. I no longer had to travel this huge continent on my own. And Owen, always the perfect gentleman, took care of so many details. He would help me stay strong and healthy too when the cold weather hit, or else he would take the performance on alone when my hideous laryngitis leveled me, so we wouldn't lose a take for the night. He was a sensation, and always relayed my apologies and my heartfelt thanks. But a most wonderful moment happened that summer. We were asked to entertain at the closing night campfire for the Katiragi Canoe Club in the Thousand Islands. Canoers! Oh. Just like me, people my own age. They were hushed as I stood up in the firelight and started, "My forest brave, my redskin love, farewell." A young man at my feet stared up at me until I finished. And with a huge sigh led the applause. Later, he asked quietly if we might walk together by the water. His name was Harry O'Brien, and he was beautiful. And Commodore of the Muskoka Lakes Club. We talked all night. Face the people, Harry. We talked all night, and I told him things I never knew I knew. And he told me about feelings he never knew he had. Everything felt so fresh and hopeful. The St. Lawrence shimmered in the starlight. And when he touched me, I must have stumbled, because for a moment he held my hand and held me to him. Then he placed a gold locket around my neck. Don't worry, that part's improvisational. There you go, Harry.
Come on, Harry.
Let's go back. The next morning, I cheered his team on to victory and waved goodbye above the crowds. And although we kept in touch by mail, I never saw him again. Lady of passion, lady of fire, words are my symphony, rhythm my choir. Into the heart of the hardiest land came the maid of the river grand. Long admired beauty, men at my feet, waiting and praying someday to meet someone to love me, offer his hand to the maid of the river grand. There on the beach, 'neath a star crystal sky, waiting to teach someone tender as I how to bend gently a mother's decree and set all my wandering free. Soon on his arm she goes, he holds his breath, begs to belong to her now until death, loving on hourglass, vanishing sand for the maid of the river grand. One fond embrace and but one precious kiss, left with a moment as fleeting as this, a faraway look in those aching blue eyes as the sun started gently to rise. Now in my memory
of gold on a tarnishing chain, an echoing sob saying, please understand, my maid of the river grand.
But I was young and so excited as I turned my eyes toward the continent as I knew I must. With rave reviews from all of the arts writers from Ontario, New York, and Massachusetts, I would sail to England. In April of 1894, I departed Canada. Cold and wet, coughing and wheezing, I made my way onto the deck of that big Cunard ship every day for the wonderful air of the Atlantic. After only 5 stomach-flipping days, I set foot onto British soil, my mother's beloved homeland. The Earl of Aberdeen and Lord Ripton, both old guests of Chiefswood, took on my sponsorship, and within days I was introduced to London society by Sir Charles Tupper. I was described as the Mohawk Princess. I performed my most popular works, and they applauded heartily. London, the height of the season. London, I made my debut. Someone deduced with good reason my kind of poetry offered a novelty. Ladies and lords without numbering, though they were miles beyond me, managed to watch without slumbering Indian history, magic, and mystery. I was feted non-stop at garden soirees, tea parties, buffets, boring balls, and one particularly long literary luncheon where I met a very short professor who assured me he could arrange an audience with the very best critic in the city. The die was cast. Sophisticated British Isles sing my praises, sigh when they look at me. Through the streets I trudge for miles. Please, sir, publish my little book for me. London, I went with my cap in hand. London had beckoned to me from some colonial hinterland, simple Canadian, dimpled and radiant. My little suitcase from Canada held the most meager assortment of clothes. Somehow I'd gotten by on the simplest of garments, but I met a Cockney seamstress on the trip over who took pity on my shuffling state and insisted on making me 4 new gowns for my introduction into, the world of grace and charm, about which she admitted she knew bloody nothing, ducks. She was lovely. We kept in touch. Sweetheart of the hoi polloi, Iroquois princess, Littleton god, give them something they enjoy. Right from the heart, hear them applaud for you, London. I leave in the morning, come one day soon I'll return. London delivers her warning, follow your destiny, you know you're meant to be strong. And London's just another town where I belong. London's just another town where I belong. It was decided I had to meet this man named Clement Scott. I'd heard he was an ogre, but he had dictated the dramatic tastes of London society for almost 2 decades, and it was on his doorstep that I planted myself in the pouring rain. Trembling, I handed over my manuscript called The White Wampum and waited with frozen ankles for his decision. He burped, hummed and hawed, looked me over, cleared his throat and scratched out a short note, and sent me off to the firm of Bodleyhead, the greatest publishers of poets in the English language. Mother, Father, Grandpa Smoke, I got a deal! And a very tiny advance. But oh, I got a deal! I raced back home to Brantford. I arrived to a very tired hug from my gray and aging mother, a never-ending squawking complaints from my sister Eva. My beautiful mother looked dry and desiccated, and Eva hung onto my cloak until I emptied my purse into her hands. The rich, elegant life of London seemed worlds away as I witnessed the stark reality of life at home. Illness was now becoming too much of my life. Often, I would tremble under the covers, terrified that I'd never make it to the hall to perform, never have the strength of voice to fill the large venues we were now playing. I cried in the darkness. I longed for the sun. But I had to go on. Thank the Lord, Manager Frank had us all booked up in the beautiful prairies, and we were to start a tour of Manitoba in 10 short days. Winnipeg had always been my central jumping-off point for all of Canada's western centres, so I decided to keep a cozy room in the Manitoba Hotel. That first night in Winnipeg, as I stepped on stage and stared out at a standing room-only house, my eyes filled up and my heart swelled. My entrance was greeted with a standing ovation. Here I was, at home in the West, my real home. After the performance, amid hoots and hollers, I floated into the wings to be met by the critic from the Free Press. He introduced me to Walter McRae, who would soon become my new partner. On top of that joyous news, a tall, shy financier, Charles Robert Lumley Drayton, presented his card and insisted he take us all out to supper. Well, by the end of the night, he'd taken my heart as well. He won me with his intelligence, his bravery, and his blushing smile. His countenance was much like my father's. I hadn't realized how frightening my wandering life had become to me until I stood by his side and felt us breathing as one. Although his work took him all over the West, I was soon rushing back to the East and glowing with delight because, with a tender kiss, he'd asked for my hand. I accepted. Mother? Mother! I raced back home to Brantford. I found Eva blocking the door to my mother's bedroom and shushing me loudly. Have you no thought for the ill and dying? I rocked my fragile mother as she clung to me, whispered my love for her, and told her of my engagement. Oh, Mother, wouldn't Father have made a great grandpapa? She held my hand to her heart, and in less than half an hour she was gone. That sweet, perfect woman. Oh, Mother, I'll never hear you sing to me again.
so wide open keep, shielding their sleep, unyielding to sleep. The heron is homing, the plover is still, the night owl calls from his haunt on the hill. Afar the fox barks, afar the stars peep. Little brown baby of mine, go to sleep.
My book was finally published and was available amazingly soon in Canada, the United States, and Great Britain too. Bookings came. I toured from the Maritimes to Victoria, was given awards from universities, was wined and dined and made to feel so very special, so very wanted. I fought the aches in my body, the panic in my throat, and kept right on traveling until I could return to Winnipeg and my darling Charlie. I flung open my dressing room door and found him, hat in hand and sorely downcast. Where are your parents, Charles? Could they not come this evening? They came, and they left, Pauline. They said nothing to me. Nothing. I must go. They're waiting for me. I'll speak to you soon. Tomorrow. I watched him walk away. His shoulders told me everything. I was not to their liking. Not a match for their son. My heart broke. A violent shiver ran through my bones, and for the first time in my life, I felt old. Terribly old. Oh, yes. I released him from his promise. And from that moment on, I would choose to be alone. I needed to get away, to see another world, one that held no memory of him. I gave Eva what few dollars I had left and went once more to London. Once in England, I was asked to help with the most remarkable request. Squamish Chief Joe Capilano and 3 other West Coast chiefs had arrived in the blasting heat of summer, determined to speak personally with King Edward VII. Their grievances were that white settlers in British Columbia had created new laws to deny the local tribes their rights to hunt game and fish their nearby streams. They spoke no English, these brave and gentle brothers, and proudly dressed in their Salish weavings, stood wilting outside the gates of Parliament, demanding to speak with the great white father of the colonies. King Edward was away on holidays in Europe.
Would I please come and explain to these gentlemen that they will have to wait several weeks for His Majesty's return?
I rushed to meet Joe Capilano, and we 5 Canadians were invited in for some lemonade and a quiet chat in a very elegant chamber room. The tribes represented were Squamish, Bonaparte, and Cowichan. They spoke no Mohawk. With a combination of broken English and sign language, I was able to bit by bit make it clear that a long wait was in order. But in August, the king met with the men, stepped from his throne to introduce them to his queen, and made it clear that he would rectify the unfortunate situation. I was the happiest I had ever been. I was around my own people, and I had helped put a stop to the laws that threaten their traditional rights. Once back home in Canada, McCrae and I bravely accepted a 10-week tour across the United States as part of a brand new experiment, Chautauqua Days. It was described as the most American thing in America, and started in Lake Chautauqua in New York State and rolled like wildfire right across the nation. It had a religious start because Bible schools were popular in the summer times for families of like minds to share an inexpensive holiday. Huge tents were set up, and a variety of speakers, players, and poets were invited to entertain. And there was I, one of the very few women to be seen on stage, and certainly the only Indian they'd ever witnessed speaking about her heritage. They mostly stared at me as if I were a freak. And I made sure they'd never forget their Canadian import by performing the cattle thief. Stand back! Stand back, you whiteskins. Touch that dead man to your shame. You have stolen my father's spirit, but his body I only claim. You have killed him, but you shall not dare to touch him now he's dead. You have cursed and called him cattle thief, but you robbed him first of bread. Robbed him and robbed my people. Look there at that shrunken face. Starved with a hollow hunger we owe to you and to your race. What have you left to us of land? What have you left of game? What have you brought but evil and curses since you came? How have you paid us for our game? How paid us for our land? By a book to save our souls from the sins you brought in your other hand? Go back with your new religion. We never have understood. You're robbing an Indian's body and mocking his soul with food. Go back with your new religion and find, if find you can, the honest man you have ever made from out a starving man. You say your cattle are not ours, your meat is not our meat. When you pay for the land you live in, we'll pay for the meat we eat. Give back our land and our country. Give back our herds of game. Give back the furs and the forests that were ours before you came. Give back the peace and the plenty, and come back with your new belief and blame. If you dare. The hunger that drove him to be a thief. I was hailed as the most exciting performer on that tour. And although it was an artistic success, I didn't make any money. The time was now to deal with the Chiefswood estate. I needed to confront Eva and tell her I wanted my share from the sale of Chiefswood. Yes, I'm home, Eva. Yes, it's me, Eva. Who else did you think that it would be? And I need the money that you swore you'd save. No, I don't expect your praises at my grave. But sister, I'm tired. And I want. Lord, do you do anything but taunt? I decided to spend the last part of my life in the West. The beautiful Canadian West. I felt almost reborn. Now I had Chief Joe's loving Squamish family to welcome me. Now I have canoers, storytellers, orators, soft black eyes and warm open arms all around me. Chief Joe and I became best friends, and he thanked me. He had spoken to the king, and the West Coast laws were changed. That is what truly great men do, Pauline, he said. They step down, hold hands with other leaders, and they give their word. Vancouver seemed now to take up so much of my time. I wrote articles for boys' publications, Family Life magazines, and special poems to celebrate Vancouver. My book, The Shaganappy, found great favor with the Boy Scouts of Canada and the United States. I decided to make that gracious city my home and walked each day all over Stanley Park. I spent my stronger days with Chief Joe, hearing all the wonderful tales of the West Coast nations. Years later, after he died in his sleep, we arranged for the publication of one last book, The Legends of the Capilano. The title was later changed to The Legends of Vancouver, but at least it was printed now for all to read, Joe Capilano's stories. I knew I was dying long before the doctors did. I wandered through my field of memories, kicking aside the thorns and bending to admire the buttercups. I did not announce my farewell performance. Instead, I set out alone on a 6-month tour of the prairies, and like the Chinooks that swirl and roll over the frozen lands, bade my silent goodbyes. Time was running out, battle-worn and ill. I retired from the recital stage and turned at last to writing, full-time. And of course, I walked each day, no matter how slowly, my beloved Stanley Park. My spirit was at home on Siwash Rock. As a matter of fact, it still is. And when I slipped away, it was a typical March day with calm, overcast sky and not a breath of wind. They buried me on my birthday. I would have been 52. Grandpa Smoke? You honor me with your spirit, Grandpa Smoke. You're here, and you know how I know? I can smell your tobacco in the air.
Remember long ago, you take me by the hand. You tell me all you know about our people of the Grand. Stories of our past, laced with pride and pain, trembling here at last. I feel your love again. I have shared those memories as I've wandered through the world. From the stories of our elders to the daydreams of a girl, and through the lonely days, the nights when sleep won't come. As I waltz across the stage, in my heart I heard the drum. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. My honored Grandpa Smoke, with me through the years, you have spoken in my dreams. You have smiled away my tears. With wisdom born of love, you've helped me understand the eagle and the dove, the mysteries of man. But now as darkness falls, the sky is turning gray. When my Creator calls, smoke, show me the way. And though I'll sorely miss